Good morning. I'm Omega Burkhart, the ministerial intern of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Rockford, Illinois. Whether you are joining us live at 10 a.m. this morning on October 4th, or at another time in the future, we welcome you. Whether you are a member or a friend of the Unitarian Universalist Church, Rockford, or if you are a member of our congregation or visiting us for the first time, we welcome you. If you are exploring a new religion and have found us, welcome. Whether you are frightened, grieving, determined, curious, sad, furious, welcome. Whoever you are and whatever brings you here, welcome. We are coming to you live from the sanctuary of the church this morning. With me today is our pulpit guest, Reverend Mitra Rahnema. Tim Anderson, our colleague in worship and music director of the church, is here. And Lindsay Dunn, our director of religious education, is also with us. Autumn Powell, our office manager, is in the back of the hall running technology for us. Our worship associate this morning is Nicole Tickner, and she has pre-recorded testimony you'll hear later in the service. And Chris Ainsworth, our membership director, is at home but will chime in on the live feed on Facebook. Reverend Matthew, of course, is on sabbatical and will return to us later in December. If you are watching this streaming on Facebook, and you see a comment area, feel free to chime in and say hello. Be present with us and be thoughtful about what you post. It is public. If you'd prefer not to be distracted on that same feed, there is a quiet mode. You can turn the comments off. So at this point, I will ring the bell and we will worship together. This morning, at the beginning of October, we will be beginning the exploration of a new hymn of the month. So we will start by singing it this morning with Tim. Here We Have Gathered, hymn 360.
Side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
I am so glad that you have gathered with us for worship this morning. If today is your first time with us, we're especially happy to have you joining us online. Please do take a moment to like our Facebook page as a way of staying in touch. You can also go to uurockford.org and click on the newsletter sign up to share your information. We look forward to when we can gather in person again, and we hope to meet you then. The flaming chalice is a symbol of our faith, a beacon of truth, a fire for justice, a warmth for the soul. As Lindsay lights our chalice here at the church, let us speak together the covenant of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and reason is its guide. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in freedom, and to serve human need. This is our covenant. Now, let us sing together our chalice response song.
May love shine forth through us today. May light of reason guide our way. May beauty, truth, and joy become a flame that burns in every one.
As we move into October, some of us may be making changes to our households and household routines to reflect the cooling weather. In my house, this is the time of the year when we change out the lighter cotton blankets of summer to the quilts and down comforters of winter. My paternal grandmother was a quilter, and one of my most prized possessions is a quilt that she made for me when I turned 1. I no longer use that quilt as it has grown threadbare from use. But I still do take it out to admire it and its hand-stitched circles, squares, patterns of green flowers, and the checkered cloth of some of my grandfather's old shirts. Our theme of the month is emotional intelligence. We'll be exploring emotional intelligence all through October. This is a deep understanding of how our emotions and feelings impact every moment of our lives. Quilting, I think, is a deep metaphor for this understanding. Quilters will tell you that there is something very centering, in fact, very therapeutic, for the concentrated layering and stitching and discovering of new patterns. There is a balance of precision, deliberate precision, and serendipitous chance, of unexpected symmetry and beauty that is not unlike finding emotional intelligence in unsurprising and new ways. As we ponder together the way in which we grow our emotional intelligence, let us think about it as a process of creation, a stitching together of pieces of our histories, of our presence, of our thoughts, and of our feelings into a much larger piece that serves to protect and keep us warm in times of cold and worry. Come, let us stitch this together today.
Winds be still, storm clouds pass and silence come. Peace grace this time with harmony. Fly, bird of hope, and shine, light of love, and in calm let all find tranquility.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay, and I'm the Director of Religious Education here at the Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm happy to be with you again this morning. Our story this morning is The Snurch by Sean Farrell. Ruthie has a problem at school. It is not the students, it is not the classroom, it is not the reading or the writing or the math. It is the snurch. Teacher says, "Ruthie, please take your seat." There is her seat. And there is the snurch. The snurch is lots of things. Nice is not one of them. The snurch is scribbly and scrunchy. The snurch is grabby and burpy and rude. And the snurch is always with Ruthie. When teacher calls on Ruthie, the snurch throws her pencils and Ruthie forgets the question. During recess, the snurch makes rude noises and no one wants Ruthie to play. And when everyone draws in art class, the snurch becomes truly terrible. It hides, it waits, and when teacher asks if anyone wants to share their work, it leaps, it grabs, it crumples, and it makes sure that no one likes George's drawing. Teacher says, "Ruthie, that is not okay." "It wasn't me," says Ruthie. "It was the snurch." No one has a life as difficult as Ruthie's. 10 whole minutes later, Ruthie tries to draw something pretty or cute or happy, but all that comes out of her crayon is unhappy scribbles. The snurch is no help. Ruthie looks really hard at the snurch. Ruthie draws. Art class ends. Teacher asks if anyone would like to share. No one is more surprised than Ruthie when she stands up. No one except the snurch. "I will," says Ruthie. She shows the class her drawing. Her classmates look. "It's what throws our pencils," says one. "It's what makes weird noises," says another. "It's what drew on my drawing," said George. Ruthie knows the snurch wants to run away and hide. "I'm sorry about that," says Ruthie. "That's okay," says George. "And I like your drawing." And then another kid says the same, and another, until everyone agrees. Ruthie has drawn a wonderful snurch. Ruthie likes school. She likes the students, she likes the classroom, she likes the reading and the writing and the math. And Ruthie still has a snurch. The snurch is still scribbly and scrunchy. The snurch is still burpy and grabby and rude. But the snurch also listens sometimes. And sometimes the snurch is even sorry. And as hard as it can be to sit next to a snurch, Ruthie realizes she's not alone. George has one too. "I like your drawing," says Ruthie. "Thanks," says George.
We will continue to worship online for the foreseeable future. We do have some upcoming events, and you can check them out on our newsletter and on social media. In the meantime, continue to check in on one another. If you're thinking of someone who you would possibly normally see at coffee hour, you should call them up or write a quick note. Reach out. This morning, we are taking up an offering to support the work of justice and mercy in the world. 80% of what is collected today will go to the Justice for Our Neighbors Network, which provides free or low-cost immigration legal services to vulnerable immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Thank you for your generosity. You can give online by texting the number on your screen or by going to www.uurockford.org/donate. Be sure to select Share the Plate there. And I ask if you are in the habit of making your gifts towards the operating budget, your annual pledge, or Sunday in person, when you would normally be in person, that you make that gift online or send a check to the church. The offering will now be given and received.
Good morning. The concept of centering is something I have some professional experience with. I'm trained as a mental health therapist and as a yoga teacher, and both place focus on centering or grounding oneself. When I teach yoga, I'll usually start my class with some centering, say something along the lines of, allow yourself to be present in this space. Try not to think about where you came from or where you need to go. Just allow yourself to be here, now. Take notice of the earth beneath you. Take notice of how you are feeling in your body. Are there things that your body is trying to tell you? Are there feelings that are asking for attention? My favorite style of yoga is yin yoga, which has practitioners hold poses anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes. Yin yoga encourages you to be present to what arises as you hold poses for what can be an uncomfortable amount of time. It challenges the mind to stay in the pose and to focus on the breath to get through. One saying in yin yoga is that if you are feeling it, you are doing it. Our feelings live in our body, or as some like to say, the issues are in the tissues. Not only do you release the muscles, but you release the emotions as well. It's not uncommon for practitioners of yin yoga to have an emotional reaction during their practice as they are forced to slow down and turn inward. For me, all of this is about sitting with discomfort and slowing down enough to feel and not to avoid. Personally, I'm pretty terrible at this. I like to be busy, and in the workplace I thrive under multiple projects and deadlines. At home, if I'm watching TV, I am knitting. If I'm working on a project or making dinner, I'm listening to a podcast at the same time. Why do one task when I can accomplish two? As things have begun to open back up in society, I'm making an effort to try to keep my schedule reasonable while working against the lifelong habit of trying to pack 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag. Busyness is avoidance. For those of you familiar with the Enneagram personality profiles, I am an Enneagram 2. 2s are known for many things, but one prevailing characteristic of 2s is their need to be needed by others, while at the same time having the complete inability to ask for or acknowledge their own needs. To ask for what you need, you have to first have awareness about how you are feeling versus being wrapped up in what everyone else is feeling and needing. It is rough stuff and just more avoidance. I think of centering as coming back to the center, to the inside, connecting, pausing, checking in, not letting myself avoid what's happening inside. Taking some time to ask myself, hey Nikki, how's it going in there? Do you need anything? Can I get you some water? Do you have to go potty? I challenge you to take some time to center today. Check in with yourself. What do you need? What is your body telling you? Google a yin yoga class, look it up on YouTube, give it a try, sit with the discomfort. Not just in yoga, but in life, if you are feeling it, then you are doing it.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts flow restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. Then, when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
Good morning. I first want to thank the Unitarian Universalist Church of Rockford and the Reverend Matthew Johnson for inviting me to share your pulpit. I also want to thank the expertise of your staff and your intern here who make worship not just possible, but meaningful. I'm honored to be among you. The first reading this morning is a bit unique. It's a litany of presence, and this is how it works. I will read through the entire litany. It will go on your screen in a minute. And I invite you to read the ones that resonate with you in this moment, on this day. You can read them out loud. You can make note of them on your Facebook live stream with a smile or a wave to say, "This is true from my heart," or just take note in your mind of what is true for you. As you do, as we read through, know that there are others who find resonance. You are not alone. I am. I am hopeful. I am frazzled. I am rested. I am yearning. I am happy. I am hungry. I am sated. I am lonely. I am pleased. I am worried. I'm optimistic. I am loving. I am encouraged. I am nervous. I am frustrated. I am overjoyed. I am anxious. I am confident. I am hurt. I am excited. I am gloomy. I am angry. I am comforted. I am content. I am challenged. I am afraid. I am dismayed. I am authentic. I am energized. I am overwhelmed. I am exhausted. I am sad. I am undaunted. I am invested. I am prepared. I am open. The second reading is by the 14th century Persian poet Shams Anded Muhammad Hafiz, also known as Hafez. The poem is titled, "This Place Where You Are Right Now." This place where you are right now, God circled on a map for you. Wherever your eyes and arms and heart can move against the earth and sky, the beloved has bowed there. Our beloved has bowed there, knowing that you were coming. I could tell you a priceless secret about your real worth, dear pilgrim, but any unkindness to yourself, any confusion about others, will keep one from accepting the grace, the love, the sublime freedom divine knowledge always offers you. Never mind, Hafiz, about the great requirements this path demands of the wayfarers, for your soul is too full of wine tonight to withhold the wondrous truth from the world, that this place where you are right now, God circled on a map for you. And wherever, darling, you can move against the earth and sky, the beloved has bowed there, knowing that you were coming. I invite us into a centering moment. You might want to close your eyes for a minute, or if you prefer and are more comfortable, find a spot on your wall where you can soften your gaze. Take a deep breath, for this is a time to clear our minds of clutter. Take notice of the ground rising up to support your body just where you are. We are present together. Imagine where your personal center is. What shape does it take? Is it cool or warm, bright or shaded, connected, floating? When you feel your center, does it offer you power or rest, or both? Get connected to your center in this moment and take a breath. Then in your mind's eye, imagine the center of all those watching this service, now or in the future. Imagine your center being connected to their center. Honor that connection, the love, the heartbreaks, the depth of being together. Breathe into this moment of centering. And I invite us to return to worship together. As we do, let us keep in our mind all the people with us and throughout the entire world, their names known and names unknown, who are sick or battling COVID or any other affliction, and to those who in this moment are feeling lonely or afraid. And with a bow in our hearts, let us pray that they soon know recovery, love, and comfort. May it be so. I once heard this story about a couple who had this really big, great wedding to honor their union. And on the day of, just as they had planned, the ceremony went really well. And the new husband and wife, their names were Sarah and Paul, were ready to celebrate. But just then, they heard about this huge car accident that had happened about less than a mile away from where their wedding was. And Sarah and Paul were both paramedics. So they jumped in a car and went to the scene. And she hoisted up that white wedding dress and got to work trying to help. Over the years, this story stuck in my mind because it seemed that Sarah and Paul poised an interesting emotional intelligence. They knew that even on this very special day, how to balance the many ways that we are called to center, decenter, and recenter life. What day represents the act of centering our lives more than a wedding day? At its best, a marriage is a model of companionship that helps each person live more fully in the larger world. In this story, Sarah and Paul did just that. In the moment of centering their life together, they decentered what they had planned and used instead their talents and resources in the larger world. A profound first act of union. Well, hopefully it came after the kiss, but it was profound. And then they returned. Different, perhaps a little disheveled, hearts united and recentered to celebrate life. Sarah and Paul's union story is one of emotional intelligence, which happens to be the monthly theme. Emotional intelligence, at its basic level, is the ability to identify and work with our emotions, as well as the emotions of others. It's talked about as either a construct of being or an outline of interpersonal skills. Either way, overall, it includes at least 3 skills. 1, emotional awareness, the ability to identify and name our emotions. 2nd is the ability to harness those emotions to inform our thinking, our problem solving, the things that we do. And the 3rd is the ability to manage our emotions, which is a kind of regulating when needed. Basically, an emotionally intelligent person is highly conscious of their own emotional state, even negative emotions such as frustration and sadness that we tend to want to push away, and is able to name and manage them. They are also tuned into the emotions of others. In the case of Sarah and Paul, they were able to act at a moment's notice when they were immersed in something else, something they had planned for a long time. They likely had a deep understanding of who they were as individuals, as a couple, and in their professional roles. Well, emotional intelligence is not just something you have or you're born with. We can give it attention and learn skills. Perhaps we might work in different areas and at different times to increase the emotional intelligence, like sewing together the fabrics of a quilt. Studying our own lives, examining our stories, and how we learn to live is one avenue towards emotional intelligence. Another way is providing that proactive witness to the story of others, reflecting back what we learned. And another way to increase our capacity for emotional intelligence is to engage with the practice of centering, decentering, and recentering throughout our lives. So that's what we're going to talk about. Centering is identifying that which is on the margins of our being, to explore our own humanity and inhumanity. We also do so in society as we create justice to transform our collective consciousness to see our values implemented in the larger world. This is a deeply Unitarian Universalist practice. This is how we frame faith, how we live our values. Let's be honest, the world pulls us in a million different directions and offers complicated messages about what should be at the center of our life. Messages about how we should look, what we should do, what is success, what is good, who is bad, what is good, what is bad. And we're immersed in a culture that centers the United States, this white hero identity, and centers Christianity as a religious authority. The centering we Unitarian Universalists talk about is the practice of finding the center of you, returning to that breath, finding the love, and honoring our curiosity. Centering is learning of our snurches individually and collectively. The Pope John the 23rd, who was Pope from 1953 to 1968, was once asked, "What is it like to be Pope?" And I loved his answer. He said, "It often happens that I wake at night and begin to think about a serious problem and decide I must tell the Pope about it. Then I wake up and remember I am the Pope." His quote reminds me of many people. You exist. You are living a life that matters. That awakening is a form of centering. All of us have things on the margins of our beings. It might be a longing, a discomfort, a hope, need, a regret, a wish, a wonderment. When we center that which is on the margins, we learn what we believe and what we know. And we have to be honest, centering comes with some rocky ground and some grief, because when we identify who we are, we also learn what enhances and limits our personal lives. We commonly hear stories about centering when you hear coming out stories. When I first came out, I took what was on the margins of my spirit and put it at the center of my life story. And it came with discomfort. I remember thinking that I now had this tag that everyone I encountered in life would think, there's Mitra, she's queer. And that brought some discomfort for me. And I think that thought went on for years. It permeated every interaction for a while, because it was newly centered in my mind. And therefore, I assumed that it was also centered in everybody else's mind, as if I was the center of everybody else's mind. Yet there was also, in that centering, an affirmation and community connection that was made. I also remember at that time, this was over 30 years ago, a friend of mine told her mom, who was like a second mom to me, and she responded with, well, we should throw Mitra a party. Even though there wasn't actually a party, the idea struck me very deeply. It was shocking that others would also center this thing on my margins. That meant a whole lot. And to take a point of personal privilege in that story, I want to lift up who that mom was, Reverend Judy Clymer-Wells, because she passed this last Monday, and I will miss her. There are more stories of centering in my life, stories about race and gender and faith, things that were not reflected in society, actually shamed in some way, and therefore on the margins of my consciousness. I think centering that which is on the margins of our being in society is really a process of liberation. You are enough, just in the place you are right now. In a world that marginalizes existence and tells us that we are the only. Centering is the spiritual affirmation of existence. Centering oneself can also have downfalls. When we are in that fresh space of centering some part of ourselves, we can become unsatisfied and agitated, as everything else in the world might seem superficial. This is at the center. It also means we can become static, only developing our sense of self in reaction to the world rather than with the world. The affirmation that we are good enough is profound. And it is also true that we are not all that we need. We are not enough. There are things like friends and God and family and spirit and the earth and much more that we also need. That means there comes a time to decenter ourselves. One of the more popular television shows that attempted to decenter was Downton Abbey. The show was about the lives of people in the early 1900s who live in this big castle in England. And what makes the show interesting is that the story follows both the hearts and heartbreaks of the wealthy owner family who live in most of the house, as well as the servants on the lower floors. It is a show of decentering by exploring two separate worlds as they intersect, because they live in the same home. Decentering can come when we are surprised, knocked off our center, stressed, sick, or even falling in love is a little decentering. A migraine headache can certainly decenter your life. So can the news of a pandemic. And when we're all stressed about safety, a police officer putting his knee on the neck of a black man, murdering him, that's decentering. When we witness those rough edges of society, the shock of our inhumaneness, it's actually appropriate to be put off center. Decentering can also be a choice to set ourselves aside, to put someone or something else at the center of truth. That might be our family, work, or justice. Decentering is the way we can be beautifully and fully present to another, and even to a larger system. The editor of the book titled Decentering America, Jessica Ganow-Hetch, says, quote, "Decentering means to focus less on a central actor and more on the nature of interaction, the process, the forum, and the arena," end quote. Decentering is holding our knowledge not with a tight fist, but with an open hand. Holding it lightly. Because as hopefully you've heard, we often say, what we know is only a piece of the truth. Decentering teaches us that it's worthy to ask questions about what we are told to believe is normative and good. It is, quote, queering our theology for the sake of ethics and decentering the narratives we think is so obvious. It's adding information about culture and gender and race and ability to the beauty of our lives. Adding information, I'm going to say that again, about culture and race and gender and ethics to the beauty of our lives to create new meanings. Long time ago, what feels like a really long time ago, I studied biblical interpretation and learned that to understand biblical text, one must decenter our Western culture. A good example comes in the parable of the prodigal son in the Gospel of Luke. That's the story about the man with two sons, and the younger one asks for an inheritance, and then to the anguish of his father, he goes out into the world and loses all his money, and he returns home. And when he returns, his father sees him across a field and starts running to his son. Well, at one time, for a long time, religious academics from the United States interpreted the father running to greet his son as a message about universal love. Sounds nice, But over time, scholars from different disciplines and cultures, including the Middle East, where, let's remember, it all takes place there, started talking to each other. Western scholars were forced to de-center their interpretation, to unlearn what they knew and consider a different perspective. The story of the prodigal son, there was this knowing in Western white, let's face it, male biblical scholars that they could not know. Middle Eastern scholars could know that a rural man running in the Middle East would require showing his legs, and that would be a sign of shame. That was a huge, The father's running was culturally shaming of himself. In Western academia, decentering the knowing or unlearning what we learned made room for an entirely different interpretation about standing in that which is deemed shameful in order to protect another, in this case, his son. It's a really important message. The irony is that when we decenter the interpretation, the story of the prodigal son is, in fact, about decentering our comfort, safety, and privilege, or using our privilege on behalf of another. It reminds me, actually, of a more modern story. It's the end of one of my very favorite movies, Little Miss Sunshine, when this young, really quickly, spoiler alert, when this young 10-year-old girl is competing in a beauty pageant, and at the very end she has to give a talent. She gives this very provocative dance, but she doesn't know it's provocative. And the crowd that's watching starts to boo her because she's 10 years old and she's kind of giving like a dance. So then her brother and her uncle and her mom and her father jump on stage and start dancing with her. Rather than pulling her off stage, they protect her space and redirect the shame away from their daughter. They're saying, we are in it together, even if you're not following the rules of the game. This story is a modern version of the prodigal child. What is revealed when we decenter ourselves for another or for a larger cause is a deeper knowing and strengthening of self. Let me say that again. What is revealed when we decenter ourselves for another person or for a larger cause, we actually have a deeper knowing and strengthening of self. What's more Unitarian Universalist than that? Of course, there's a danger of decentering all the time, and that danger is our own illness. It can cause us to lose faith in a larger story of which we are a part. This is why, even though decentering is powerful and transformative, and where our moral voice is found, we cannot stay there always. I think you know what comes next: recentering. Rather than returning to be the person we were after we have learned and unlearned what we knew, we reclaim as we recenter ourselves in the world, or with the world. We do this with biblical text, with words like queer, with our personal and social failings, as well as our longings. We seek interconnection, the places where the spheres of life overlap. We can let go and still feel solid, ultimately finding a peace, bit by bit moving toward a deeper emotional intelligence and a renewed offering of the self into the world. It is reimagining our part of something bigger. We do this. Once we recenter, then we return to centering and do it all over again about something else. It's a lifelong task that can take a long time. But years ago, I heard a story on a podcast titled Code Switch about Christina Su, a Chinese-American woman who wrote a letter to parents for Black lives. And the background is that when many Asian Americans protested around the country at the persecution of Peter Ling, a Chinese-American police officer who killed Akai Gurley, the protesters felt that the officer was being treated as a scapegoat during this time of heightened focus. The protesters pointed to many white officers who did not face similar consequences for the unjust killing of a Black person. And Christina was disturbed, saying, "To me, clearly justice is about getting justice for these Black families, not about making sure that Asian people have the same privilege as white people." So she was inspired to bring many Asian Americans together to write a letter to their parents about why Asian Americans should care about Black Lives Matter. And the letter went viral. Today, many people have written similar letters in Hmong, Spanish, Malaysian. The action people of color and immigrants in various communities to write letters to their parents for Black lives is a really powerful centering, decentering, and recentering in almost a simultaneous moment. You are, you decenter, you recenter, relearning anew our sense of self in collective solidarity against oppression, offering yourself again for the world, with the world. Then repeat. It becomes a spiritual practice. That faithful practice of centering and decentering and recentering leads us towards a more integrated emotional intelligence. So as you go about your week, I invite you to think about, what are you needing to center? What could we decenter? What connections could you recenter? During this pandemic, which honestly is a kind of centering and decentering at the same time, perhaps a good response would be to imagine what we might recenter once the world opens up again. For example, what if we centered people with disabilities, knowing that it will make life better for all of us, because we're all temporarily able? Or what if a congregation centered the lives of children, made that the number one consideration when making congregational choices? Or what if a society centered people of color in this pandemic? How would that inform this question about who gets the vaccine? Or who has health insurance? If we really centered people of color. Or what if a school centers the homeless when deciding how they should open up? That once they can make the homeless safe, it will benefit everyone. If we decenter the affirmation of what we know and embrace a recentering of the other, what if we decenter the affirmation of what we know and embrace a recentering of the other? How would that change our purpose, your purpose, community's purpose, society? How would that increase our emotional intelligence, strengthen our moral voice? What if we all centered fear or loneliness or shame, three very deeply religious constructs, and we went through the process, learned what we knew, unlearn what we knew, and create new meanings? What would we do differently? What I know is that if we center that which is on the margins when making educational, social, financial decisions, it will ultimately benefit all of us, making us stronger. It always has. Because the truth is, we're also connected, that recentering something else also centers ourselves. Therefore, as we move forward into the month of October, may we all center emotions, learn to decenter ourselves, and recenter the whole. We're in it together. May it be so.
As we bring our worship together to a close, Lindsay will extinguish our chalice this morning, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of our commitment. These we will carry with us until we are together again. In the meantime, let us center love. This is a difficult time. Let us center love. In the words of Eric Williams, we all emerge from and dwell within, are transformed by and called back to love. May your mind be humbled before this mystery. May your heart grow hopeful by it, and may you be sustained by love always. Let us sing our sung blessing.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way. Go our way in peace, wander as we may. Blessed is the path we take, may love guide us on our way.